reins out of my hand. He's naughty. He can't do that. He can't be that strong. So we need to put a stronger bit in his mouth. But then he opened his mouth. So then we tightened the noseband. He doesn't open his mouth now that we tightened the noseband. And I said, did it fix the flying changes? Does he still root the reins out of your hand? Does he still bolt after the changes? And is he clean now? No. He still roots the reins out of my hand, even in the trot, even in the walk. He still bolts after the flying change, and no, the changes aren't clean. And I said, so I guess it didn't work to put him in a stronger bit and tighten the noseband. So something else is going wrong here. And one of the things that's important to me is that those people, very, very prominent people in the international scene, were treating the things that this horse was doing as though he was a disciplinary problem. He was naughty. He was doing something bad, instead of recognizing that these things that this horse was doing, these were symptoms of the way he was being ridden that wasn't allowing him to do these changes. So I asked her if he, out in the meadow when he's free, can he do a flying change? Oh yes, he does brilliant flying changes. So there's one problem here, one common denominator, and it's us sitting on his back. So we worked for a little while, and I watched her ride him, and she rode him in a very common way that we see today among a lot of dressage riders. He was in a very deep, round frame with his head behind the vertical and very, very forward. And you heard Stephanie earlier today talking about the importance of a horse using his neck out, long and low, to help with his balance. Horses use their neck to balance their whole body, and they use their neck as a lever to shift the weight to the haunches. But when a horse is forced into this very deep, round, overflexed, hyperflexed frame, many warm bloods bred today can compensate for being pulled onto their forehand because they're born with such extravagant gaits and such power. They can compensate for it. It's not right, but they can get away with it. But this horse, this Spanish horse that this trainer, as soon as she pulled his head and neck down there, he already had a big head and neck. He was a stallion. Just pulled him right onto his forehand. And then she tried to drive him forward, forward, forward. He was running off his feet. He couldn't handle the fact that he was being handicapped by his frame, trapped in a frame that put all his weight over his front legs, and then asked to do something that requires his weight to be more up and on his haunches. So I talked to her a little bit about the fact that he was too deep and too low, and brought him back to walk and slowed everything down, let his neck come up to a natural position, and not worry about him being round, and slowed him way down until his tempo, he could keep up with it. He wasn't running forward off his feet. And we worked in the walk for about 15 minutes. And then she picked up the canter, and he was uphill, and she did several changes, and he never rooted the reins out of her hand. He didn't bolt after the change, and all the changes were clean. And we loosened the noseband. I want to say that. We loosened the noseband before we did anything else. And the important thing to me about this was that this horse was not naughty. He didn't do anything wrong. But he was being asked to perform in a way, in a balance that he couldn't do it in that balance. The same as if somebody tied my hands behind my back and then shoved me forward and asked me to perform something when I couldn't balance myself. And the entire time we were working, this rider, whom I have a great deal of respect for her, she's a very good trainer, But in this instance, it wasn't working. During the entire time, she said, interesting. It's so different. Interesting. It's so different. And I finally said, no, it's not different. It's not different from what we were taught in the very, very beginning, what we've been taught for hundreds of years, that works with the biomechanics of the horse. We have to maintain the balance of the horse. We can't just hope to drive him forward and get spectacular gaits and cram him into a frame. And 2 weeks later, she called me up and she said, I just want to tell you, he went to his first horse show and he got 7s on his flying changes, and all of his trot work and his lateral work was better, and he got the highest score that he's gotten. Interesting. It's so different. And I was thrilled because here, you know, we all know, after listening to everybody talk here today, the importance of trying to stay within these ideals of classical training, staying with the nature, physiological, biomechanical, and behavioral nature of the horse. We've watched it today with all these horses. We've listened to Stephanie and we've watched Holly. And it makes sense. Of course we want to be good to our horses, but we want to compete. And we see all these competition horses around us with spectacular gaits and doing spectacular things. And it's easy to be lured, seduced into that method. And so for her to come home, this is a very prominent trainer. She has a large audience of students. A larger audience of students than I have. She has much more influence. For her to come home and have been successful in a competition by going back and retraining this horse in the way we've been taught for centuries, working with him, working with his body, because that's the way it works best. You know, we've been taught the pole must be the highest point. Why? Because it works best there. The horse can balance himself the best there. He's not trapped. He's not handicapped by his frame. And so over the weeks, I've been going back and helping her again and again, not only with this horse, but now another horse, and then another horse, and a warm blood, and a thoroughbred, and a Friesian, and a Lusitano, and all of a sudden, all these other horses are sort of creeping into the program. And just before I came here, I was teaching a clinic there, and she said, you know, it's so exciting because I'm doing these same things with my warm bloods. And guess what? It's working. And I wanted to say, duh, but I didn't. But the whole point of the thing was that to bring her back to what she was taught.